Welcome back to Writing the Rapids. I'm your host, Joe Balecki. This is the show where writers tell me to talk to writers. The way that it works is people who have been on the show before tell me who they would like to hear on the show in the future. I pick one of those people and they come on the show and talk to me about writing like it's a capital A art. After a hour-long conversation or so, they read me a piece or pieces of writing that they have brought to share with me and all of you. And everybody goes home happy and full of the love and light of literature. If you want to support the show, you can at patreon.com/WTR. For just a measly $1 a month, you get the show about a week and a half, 2 weeks earlier than people who aren't giving me money. And that money goes to things like buying the books of the people who have been on the show, supporting their presses, hopefully in the future paying them for their time and their writing. And the ultimate goal is to have this more than once a month. Once a week, twice a week, every day. It's all there at patreon.com/WTR. This month on the show, we have Leza Cantoral. She's the editor-in-chief of Clash Books. She hosts her own writing podcast, Get Lit with Leza, a podcast where she talks to cool-ass writers. She's the author of Cartoons in the Suicide Forest and Trash Panda, and the editor of Tragedy Queens, stories inspired by Lana Del Rey and Sylvia Plath. You can find her spending way too much time on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Leza Cantoral. Now, without further ado, let's get into the show. I guess let's start with Tragedy Queens. That's the one I've read most recently. And that one, you edited, and it seems like you had the idea for it and just put out the call there and made it happen. One of the things that I found really, really interesting, and it hit me after reading The Blacklist, was, I found The Blacklist very interesting because it's sort of like the female power fantasy. Mm-hmm. And it sort of like hit me that like, oh, now I really kind of viscerally understand what people are talking about when they talk about like male power fantasy in media, like video games or movies or something like that, where it's like, it's a story about a woman who is beautiful enough to have people take pictures of her and give her money for it. And she's also badass enough to be an assassin. And I thought that was a really great way to start the collection.
Stories. We felt like it was, kind of thought of the anthology as like an album, and that was like the good rocking intro to just get it all rolling. It has great pacing, really interesting character. Something that intrigued me about it was the author, Catherine Louise, who's an amazing writer. She is a model, and she's worked for years. She's a photographer as well. So this was definitely drawing from her personal life experience. And it was just a great way to see a character taking her power back. Because there's just, I think when you are a female model especially, a lot of your existence is kind of defined by the male gaze, and especially like the men are photographers and everything, like they're the ones in control, or they think they're in control of your image, and if they don't like how you look, they're not gonna make you look how they want you to look. And so it was a really cool way to take the power back in all kinds of ways, from like, and that's what I want in general with the anthology, is like, these are stories for the most part from female perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I think there's only one that has like a male narrator protagonist. That I can remember. And most of them are written by women too, which I liked. I like I've only been recently getting more anthologies, and I really like the power of anthology to like open up a world. I recently got an anthology of like Native American poets, and like I don't know any Native American poets besides Sherman Alexie, because everybody knows Sherman Alexie, and it's had to study him in college, and it's like great. Like now I have a really thick baseline to go off of, and Tragedy Queen sort of does the same thing, where it's here's a bunch of writers. I think only one name I recognized, and I'm horribly like underread when it comes to indie lit. But there's only like one name that I recognized, and the rest I didn't know. So now I have 22 other names to go explore.
Yeah, it's like a mixtape, and you get to see like what artists you dig, and you can check out their stuff. So, which was the one you recognized?
Gabino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Dean.
Oh, he's actually. So we're doing the next anthology we have the Clash Books has coming out is a Biggie inspired anthology.
Oh, cool.
It's called Gimme the Loot. Stories inspired by the Notorious B.I.G.
Awesome.
And Gabino is the editor.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the same person who suggested I talk to you for this, his name was on that list too, so that's how I know of him. But otherwise, it would have been 23 new names. Have you seen Neon Demon?
Yeah, I saw it actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. As you were talking about the blacklist, that's the image that came to my mind. That scene where she's the guy's like painting her gold, and he like puts the gold paint or gold leaf or whatever on his hand, and the way that he like swooshes it up her neck to get the look is very sort of like very strange, like overly aggressive for the way that the paint splatters.
Yeah. I feel like that movie, I feel like the moment where what was it? There was a panther or something in her room.
Yeah, something like that. Some big jungle cat.
I feel like that moment is the heart of the movie, and I feel like a lot of the themes in the movie deal with primalness, in all kinds of ways. And I think like the main character, she seems so, you know, she doesn't know what's going on. She's like a babe in the woods, you know, all these people look at her and they're like, oh, I can totally like have my way with her or mold her into whatever. And she ends up finding an inner strength that she didn't know she had. And it's kind of like the spirit of the panther is waking up inside her in this concrete, you know, LA jungle of, you know, models, and it's a weird world because it's all surface, but the animal still exists under that glossy surface, and I think that's what makes the movie compelling. I think if the movie just had surface and there wasn't this beast heart inside it, it would just be flat and soulless.
For sure. Well, and then the way that it ends, you know, her sort of primalness doesn't end up being enough.
That ending is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a rough ending. Have you seen any of his other films, Drive or Only God Forgives or anything like that?
I don't think so. What are his other movies?
He did Drive, he did Only God Forgives, he did the Pusher movies, and a couple other ones that were like really bad that even he hates.
I don't think I actually have.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of his movies, Drive and Only God Forgives specifically, are sort of that same thing where it's quiet, and then the ending is bigger, and then it just sort of like leaves you off. Oh, he did a movie called Valhalla Rising, which is
cool,
like this like a Viking movie done by an indie art director, and it's got Mads Mikkelsen, and he doesn't speak throughout the entire film. And there's a large portion in the middle where it's orange and it's just a bunch of people on a boat. And they're just like sitting on a boat and being like miserable on this little Viking ship.
That sounds...
And then there's Cartoons in the Suicide Forest, which is your writing. One of the things I read in an interview you did with Nadia of Moonchild magazine, but I think it was in Luna, where you were talking about bizarro fiction. And I read Cartoons in the Suicide Forest before I read this quote, but the quote really solidified everything for me. You said, the key to bizarro fiction is high concept. You take an idea that seems completely out there and unbelievable, and then you have to make it work. when you write a bizarro book, you are basically designing your own religion. The world follows its own rules of causality, but still follows the rules of character development and plot arcs. And good work on that, because for the longest time I was like trying to wrap my head around exactly what bizarro is. I got all the bizarro starter packs, and I've read a couple books from Lazy Fascist, and had the line that somebody said about like, it's an anime directed by David Lynch. And
very specific. That's very weirdly specific. Yeah. The issue with bizarro is like everybody, and like religion, everybody has their own idea of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you talk to one person about, you're like, what's God? And they're like, well, you know, he's the person, he's a, you know, this deity that literally looks like a human man, and he's going to punish you if you're bad. And then you ask somebody else, and it's like, oh, it's just the Gaia energy of the universe. Like, you know, everybody has a different idea, you know, or the whole metaphor of the elephant and people blindfolded, and you ask them what's an elephant, and they're each touching a different part, and they're each describing a different thing. Like bizarro is a lot like that, because it's kind of everybody kind of goes about it in a different way. Like the main writer of the bizarro genre is Carlton Mellick III, mm-hmm. and you know, that's where that basic premise, like everything I'm saying, like that's where that comes from, where it's like you're taking, so this is like the main gospel, I guess what I was saying is like you take a crazy high concept and you make it work, and you know basically what I said, you know, but for other people it's kind of, it depends, you know, some people like more, you know, my stuff is actually not high concept at all. I never did any high concept stuff. I tried, but I'm just not of that. I'm just not wired like that. I came up with cool concepts, I think, but not like high concepts. Like I would say probably one of the best high concept books that the bizarro genre came up with was Jeff Burke's Shatnerquake. And that book went viral, I believe. It did extremely well. It was a breakout hit. And the premise of that is that I haven't actually read it. I feel bad because they published it now. But the premise is that it's a Comic-Con, and like all the different characters that William Shatner played, like they all like fight each other, something like that. And I think there's like alternate realities, like different. So it's just a really cool concept that if you're a Trekkie, if you're like a fan of any of his other, like you're going to be into it, and it's referencing pop culture. And that's another thing you do see coming up a lot in bizarro is pop culture referencing. And that really spoke to me, because I'm really into like pop music and movies, and you know, some other people are more into manga and video games, and they kind of draw from those, but it's very much a product of like Gen X. You know, it's very much coming out of like kids that grew up in the 80s and were teenagers in the 90s. You know, it's very much a Gen X kind of genre, I would say.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it, and from the Gen X perspective, I have this weird feeling that like everybody in indie lit is my age. And maybe it's like an inferiority thing, where it's like everybody's got like 20 books, especially bizarro people. They have like 20 books. They have like 4 forthcoming books from like every bizarro publisher, and they're all 26 like me. And it turns out they're not all 26 like me, which makes me feel a little bit better. But
like they're 30. They're like in late, like I'm in my mid 30s ish. Yeah, I'm like, I was born like right on the millennial cusp, like 1981, like literally on the millennial cusp. And I actually connect a lot more to millennials and the millennial culture.
In what ways?
I mean, like you can see with my poetry collection, the Trash Panda thing, like, you know, I really liked alt lit, but I came to it, it was already like over by the time I discovered it. But I liked the style, and I saw some of the people online, and I saw how they like posted, and like I just love the whole energy of it, the whole casualness of it, the naturalness of it. I just found it really charming, and it spoke to me. And so when I worked on got inspired for the Trash Panda collection, it really was a combination of that, of like hanging out a lot on Tumblr and like looking at emo girl posts, uh, and becoming friends with people like Brandon Deal and Brian Allen Ellis. And I showed Brandon Deal my first poems, and he was just like he thought they were so funny, and he really enjoyed them, and that just made me happy. I wanted to keep like creating that joy, so I kept going. Like if he hadn't been there to be excited about it and just give me that feeling that I was making somebody laugh, I probably wouldn't have continued. But because he was so enthusiastic about it, that made me happy, and I wanted people to have fun with those poems.
I do feel like that is one of the more successful things about alt lit, and it's a shame that the people that I clung to from the alt lit thing ended up being not great people. Your Steve Rogenbucks and whoever else, and but I like that way of thinking about it.
But it's still changed. I think it's still changed. I think it's dumb when people are like, "Oh, this is dead." That like,
oh sure.
Once something exists, once culture is once art is disseminated into culture, into media culture and culture, it changes it forever. It doesn't. It's like toxic fumes in the atmosphere, except not bad, but like it changes it forever. It's like good toxic fumes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, or maybe it's already happening and I just don't know, like what the next sort of title is going to be placed on a certain style of writing in the next coming years. Because it seems like we're still kind of skittish now to like call anything.
I mean, I think it's stupid to call anything. I think that's part of why outlet is cool. I think like books like Infinite Jest, like I would say that's like one of the first alt-lit books in a way, because it defies genre. It's part essay, part fiction, part stream of consciousness. It's just like it refuses to categorize itself. It refuses to let the reader categorize it. It just does not. Everybody is always trying to fit into a box so that people can recognize what that thing is. And Infinite Jest is just like completely shredding all the boxes, and it's just like, okay, take me as I am. Like this is all of me. If you can't handle all of me, then I don't care. I'm gonna write this fucking huge ass book that's gonna take you 1,000,000 years to get through. And Bizarro is kind of like that too, in that it's genre defying. Like there's a great quote by Brian Keene once said that Bizarro writers are the genre fuckers. So that's kind of where I think like Clash Books. I mean, we've had a lot of sources for inspiration in our publishing company, but I think, and definitely having our roots, like, I mean, we met because of BizarroCon. Like, we were excited by the idea of genre defying, and that you can just meld things together. And I started to notice that things are just a lot cooler when you mix them up. So like with my collection, like what I like is like, I really like fairy tales. I really like surrealism, and I like horror movies, and I love poetry. So it's like it's a weird blend of all this stuff. So that was my version of genre fucking or genre melding. What story did you like in there?
I really liked Siberian Honeymoon. That was
cool.
fun. Eva Eve of Oz was really good too.
That's the one I had the most fun writing of all my any story I've written.
Oh yeah, I remember reading that in the acknowledgments or whatever at the end.
I wrote fast.
Yeah.
Fast. I forget how long, but it was fast. It was the fastest story I've written of that length.
I'm similar in that the stuff that I write the fastest is generally the stuff that I have the most fun with during and after.
Yeah.
I hate laboring. What's your editing process like?
Um, my editing process. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like for those stories, a lot of times I would write the first third, then leave it, then the middle, then leave it, then the ending, and then uh, after letting it sit for like a week or a month or whatever, like then go back to it and see everything that's wrong with it. But it's like hard to see it when it's like. But I am one of those people that does like whatever I wrote the previous day, I'll go back and do a line edit.
Mm, okay.
I'm really meticulous about lines. Like I can't stand even writing a typo. Like if I immediately fix it, and yeah, I'll do line edits like the next day to smooth out sentences. I'll read it out loud and do a line edit. That's basically my editing process. Because I can only tell if it's flowing when I read it out loud.
Sure. I agree. I think that's a good way of doing it. What do you use to write? Are you just into Word, or do you have like Scrivener or anything like that?
I mean, I write by hand a lot.
Okay.
I write in notebooks with. I used to love in high school. I used to love fountain pens. I had fountain pens, and I had all these different colored inks and stuff, and it was all very ritualistic. But it's kind of a hassle, and it can be messy. So I've graduated to Sharpie ballpoints,
Mm.
Sharpie pens. They're very smooth. They have like the smoothness of I like smooth ink, like really smooth. I don't want to feel any pressure between me and the page. I want it to just be able to flow. And I write in cursive. So a lot of first drafts I actually write by hand, or I'll get the first paragraphs going by hand, and then I'll start typing it up. And as far as in the computer, I just use Word. And I also write on my phone.
Mm-hmm. You said the fountain pen stuff was ritualistic. What do you mean by that?
Like putting in the ink.
Okay.
I felt like, I mean, this is my like 16-year-old emo self that had never done drugs a day in her life. I pictured it as like loading up a heroin needle. Like that's how I thought of it.
Okay.
And like the ink is my lifeblood that I'm putting on the page. I actually filmed myself loading my ink cartridge once.
Oh.
I footage.
Cool.
Like a close up of like the ink while this song from Pulp Fiction. Oh no, the Pumpkins, like a Smashing Pumpkins song is like playing, and I'm like, I think like Bullet with Butterfly. I don't know, I don't know. So I don't know. It was just very, yeah. It was like the ink was an extension of me, and the ink was like my blood, like my essence. So I would change the colors depending on my mood and stuff.
That's an interesting thing then. Would you like go back then? Would you have a story or a poem in several different colors being written over the course of days and sort of be able to like remind yourself then what was going on as you're looking at it, like from time?
Yeah, there probably was a little bit of that. I didn't write stories in high school though. I wrote poetry, did a lot of journaling, a lot of poetry, and some screenplays. I adapted some. Yeah, there's a few screenplays I tried to write. or wrote. I did some movies. I did some movies in high school, so I wrote the screenplays for those, and I did an adaptation of Emily of New Moon, the Lucy Maud Montgomery book.
Hmm.
That book resonated with me, so I actually began an adaptation that I never finished. And then I was when I was like 14, I was working on a screenplay about the supposed love affair between Lewis Carroll and the real Alice. Yeah.
Huh. Is there I don't know too much about Alice in Wonderland. Was there like a woman who was an inspiration for Alice then, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
A child. Yes.
Oh, geez.
Child. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as anybody can tell, nothing actually happened, uh, while she was a child. Um, Lewis Carroll had a thing for little girls. He preferred their company, and he had a lot of girlfriends, and he liked taking pictures of them. He was a photographer. He has some weirdly suggestive pictures of like Alice as like the little beggar girl, and like um, and then when she was, and he basically wrote Alice in Wonderland for her as a gift. Like he had no intention of publishing it or anything. It was just a gift for her. And then a friend suggested that he should publish it.
Mm.
So there is a original handwritten, hand drawn with his own drawings version of it that was the gift for her, and it's called Alice's Adventures Underground. And then when she was a teenager, he wanted to marry her. Um, and it didn't work out because he wasn't like rich enough, I guess.
Hmm.
He asked her parents for her hand, and they denied it. And then, like a year later, they married her to a duke.
Okay. Because this is 1880s, right? My copy has like a
Yeah,
1860s stuff like that. It's so late 1800s.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He was 20. I think he was like 23 or 22 when he first met her, and she was like 5.
Huh.
Yeah. So they became friends.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he had a lot of girlfriends. He would meet them for tea and take them to the museum, take them on boat rides and tell them stories. Like, yeah, he's kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah.
So writing that as a teenager, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I kind of a Lolita complex for a while. I also really love Lolita by Nabokov.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite book when I was 16.
Hmm. I That's one of the few books my wife and I will periodically read to each other from whatever we're reading, and anytime I said more than like a sentence from Lolita, she's just like, "Nope, shut up. Don't want to hear it. Don't
So
care. Don't know."
one of the best books ever written, I think.
I really enjoyed it. I
Oh, that intro paragraph is absolutely incredible.
mm-hmm.
I did a when I was in college and I was in a drama class. We had to pick a passage to do like a dramatic reading of, and that's the one I picked as the opening paragraph of that.
That sort of moves on into one of the things I have in my notes here about like, especially in Tragedy Queens, but definitely in cartoons in the Suicide Forest. There's lots of like the way that sex is written is interesting to me, and not like how like male writers write about sex. Um, and that's just very interesting to me. I wonder if that is just a thing in general that I'm not aware of, because I've I one don't read a lot of contemporary stuff just because I'm new to this world, and two, just because I haven't read a lot of literary fiction, and probably even less female literary fiction. But like a dude writing about sex is just like, it's almost this ugly sort of passage that like, but a lot of a lot of the sex scenes or sort of things written about in tragedy queens feels different to me.
Hmm.
Um,
In what way?
um, well, let's see, because it is different. I'm definitely not like trying to make it into a monolith. Without him and him and him, there is no me.
Hmm.
Was definitely an interesting thing. Um, more in general outside of the book, I remember reading excerpts from Marie Calloway's book, the What Purpose Did I Serve in Your Life? And um, I don't remember anything
Right.
specifically from Tragedy Queens, but like it's at once like utilitarian and pragmatic, but also sad and still beautiful and erotic, kind of all rolled into one.
Yeah. So what do you think
And
it is? Do you think women are just more emotionally involved in sex?
I don't know about that. I mean, maybe my experience with sex is very, very, very limited. I've only ever had sex with my wife, and that I'm her only partner ever. So like our like world is this sort of like enclosed thing, like just between us. Um, I feel like it probably has something to do with the emotionality of it, but also power structures
Mm.
and using sex as a tool or a means of gaining power of some sort or other.
Hmm. Yeah, like in like I have that story in my collection called Fist Pump,
Mm-hmm.
where the character, for whatever reason, I didn't really stop to think much about her motivation. That was my second story I wrote. Um, she, for some reason, uh, she wants to get beat up, and so she like gives this weird drug to the fist pimp, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as a in exchange for him and his guys to just like brutally like and it is sexual because there's like anal fisting, um to just beat the crap out of her, and she's like, so she gives them something so that they give her that, and then she's happy that she got that because that's what she wanted.
I remember reading in a book I had to read for like an advanced English class in high school that one of it was how to read literature like a professor or something like that, and a lot of the things in it were useful at the time and now seem kind of obvious or silly or um, reductive. But one of the chapters was everything is about sex, and then the next chapter was except for sex. And I feel like with a lot of this sort of indie lit by women, it's yes and rather than one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's this is definitely about sex, the act of sex, but also about all of the other things and then some.
Yeah. I mean, I think something that, and it's not just women that experience it, but I think women experience it more than like straight men, is there's always an element of danger with sex. And the element is a lot higher. You can get pregnant, you can get raped a lot easier because, just the way the body parts are made,
Mm-hmm.
the cock is made for insertion. Like we are made to be invaded. So, you know, um, there's all these consequences and there's all these fears, and they're always kind of tied up with sex. And I think like, I mean that definitely plays in those power dynamics. So there's always just a lot more at stake, um, because of just biological reasons.
Yeah, for sure. um, and just things, yeah, like I don't know, men tend to be larger. Sex tends to happen with the man on top. Like the physical like positioning is like one of control generally for the men. I wonder if part of it too has to do with just the act of like being a woman writing about sex is like a radical act for some people, or could be seen as a radical act by some people. And so like more thought is maybe just put into writing a sex scene.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I feel in general that male points of view and male desire has been well explored for centuries, and I
Sure.
think it's just women haven't really had much of a chance for a variety of reasons to describe how they are experiencing reality. So, like, you know, when I write about it or when I do anthologies and other women are writing about just the female experience in general, it probably is going to seem new and startling because, female voices just have not been, there's been gatekeepers, male gatekeepers that have made sure that women don't get published. Of course, this was more true like in the, 1800s and before that, in the 1900s, there's some women writers that actually started getting famous, and even in the 1800s, but it was an uphill battle. And even if they became popular, they were looked down on by male critics and stuff like that. They'd be like, "Oh, that's not real literature, that's just fluff that other women like, and like something that I found really interesting when I was doing research about fairy tales is that like there's like oral folk tales like that became like the fairy tales, but like the fairy tale as like a written genre was primarily a female invention. Women focused more on fairy tales. They were writing like Beauty and the Beast is written by a woman. That's and there's two versions of it, and they're both written by women. And because men didn't take the fairy tale format seriously, they thought it was just stupid. So women focused more on it, and it became kind of more their territory until Perrault kind of took it. And it sucks because like people just know about the Brothers Grimm and Perrault, and like Brothers Grimm didn't actually write any stories. They just were collecting stories. Most of those stories told by women to children or to other women. These were stories that were passed around by women about like coming of age in a man's world and shit like that. But yeah, the fairy tale is kind of, it's kind of a female creation a little bit.
Was the initial intent for fairy tales to be told to children as cautionary tales, or was it something else?
I think that was part of it, but I think like the Brothers Grimm, when they collected their stories, their focus was that more. But these stories, they were told to everybody. I mean, they were just kind of about the world itself. Like for example, the Red Riding Hood story, the first oral tales of that were very different from what became the Brothers Grimm version and then what became the Perrault version. It was a lot more brutal, and it was kind of intended for girls coming of age, and what the new perils would be. Like I was saying, sex is always tied in with danger for a female. And in the original narrative of it, it's very clear that the wolf isn't a wolf, it's a werewolf. And it's very clear that it's going to rape her. And she escapes her rapist by lying and saying she has to go pee because he has her like tied up. Like he has her foot tied up, and he makes her strip and get into bed with him. And she lies and says she says she has to go to the like poop. I don't know, whatever. She has to go to the I think there's one version where she's like, I have to pee, and he's just like, pee in bed. And she's like, no, I have to poop. It was like very raunchy. Also, she eats her own grandmother, like not intentionally, like the grandmother came first, and he like literally like cooked the grandmother and like put her blood in a vial and shit, and has like Red Riding Hood like drink the blood of her grandmother and eat her grandmother, like literally without knowing it. Um, and anyway, she manages to escape, but she doesn't. She does so without the help of any man. And then the Brothers Grimm have it where she gets eaten and then she gets rescued by a hunter.
Mm-hmm.
She gets eaten. No, she just gets eaten, I think. Yeah, she gets eaten. So it's like a moral tale. Like, don't stray from the path, you know, listen to your mother, and like, you know, don't fuck strangers, basically.
Yeah.
Of course, why the fuck is her mother sending her into the woods that's full of rapist werewolves? Like, that's what I want to know.
That is a good question. Yeah, what is she doing? Why can't she bring stuff? It's your mother, you know.
Yeah. Send your, like, prepubescent daughter into the woods full of horny, rapey werewolves. Like, it's almost like she wants her to get raped. It's really weird.
Or at least to be tested.
Yeah. It's like that's your test. But these stories are metaphorical, obviously. They're not literal.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, you know, if I had been told that story as a child, it would definitely make me want to not do whatever it is that story is.
Yeah. And Perrault kind of made it even more, like, moralizing. And he's the one that actually introduced the red cap, I believe. Which I think symbolizes menstruation.
I suppose it would. Oh man, I heard myself. That reminds me, way back in the day, back in 2008, there was a story published on the Podcastle podcast, which is fantasy fiction, short fiction, called Red Riding Hood's Child, which is a twist on it, but it's Red Riding Hood is a boy, and the wolf ends up fucking him. I remember that. So what? That was 11 years ago. So I was 15. I remember that being a very shocking thing to hear when I was 15. It's by N.K. Jemisin. I'm not familiar with the name. But Your Planet Mermaid definitely kind of takes this a turn back toward the very dark, violent fairy tale thing.
Yeah, it bothered me when I did this research and I found out how much fairy tales have been whitewashed. You know, forget about Disney. I mean, the Brothers Grimm whitewashed them, then Perrault did another whitewashing, and then Disney did like the final whitewashing, and it basically declawed them and no longer made them stories about female empowerment but about why females should submit to male power. I mean, that's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah. I'm too far removed from having seen any of them, but I can see that being the case.
What's fucked up about The Little Mermaid is like, actually, The Little Mermaid is that's Hans Christian Andersen.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's so messed up the deal she has to make, because it's like, you can get your legs, you basically become a woman, because mermaids don't have legs.
Mm-hmm.
And what's between your legs? Like, so get your legs, be a woman, walk among men. But the only way you can get your legs is if I take your voice. Which to me seems like a really weird metaphor about the patriarchy.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, little girls watch the Disney movies and all they see is like, oh, I want to be a princess.
Do you feel like lately they've been doing a better job, or does it seem like a ideological checklist sort of thing? Like
no, I've seen big changes. I mean, I was very impressed with the live action Maleficent with Angelina Jolie.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very inspiring and empowering, and kind of taking back the power, and showing just what it shows a really negative version of like a man's world, like just being so war driven and just solving everything with violence, and then it shows a fairy world in contrast, and it shows that Maleficent is not actually bad. She's just like, she's been turned away, you know. Um, so it really gave an interesting perspective of it. It kind of tripped me out because when I was little, when I was like 3, I was really obsessed with Disney and Disney movies, and my parents got me these like Disney books on tape, and I would listen to them obsessively. And I started. My dad recorded me retelling some of the stories, and I did one for Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Snow White, I think. And what's really weird is like the Sleeping Beauty one, like I told it straight, like literally just repeating the book on tape. And then I decided to just like switch everything around, so make it backwards. So like everything that was good was bad, everything that was bad was good. And I had like Sleeping Beauty's father was a devil and her mother was a witch, and Maleficent was actually good. And it's like trying to seduce like Prince Philip and stuff. It was really weird.
That sounds like a thing that kids do that is not encouraged enough. I feel like the sort of like role reversal thing should be encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I basically did the same things with with the cartoons
Mm-hmm.
collection, with a lot of the stories. I was mashing fairy tales together, like Eva of Oz, the one you brought up before.
Mm-hmm.
That's a combination of that's Princess Langwidere from Ozma of Oz. She's this princess that switches her heads. She has a bunch of heads she collects, and she switches them around. She's like a total narcissist. If people watch the movie, it's Return to Oz, where I think she makes an appearance in that. So it's Princess Langwidere mixed with like Eva Braun,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the Wicked Queen in Snow White, like all as one character. And Hitler is her magic mirror.
Yeah, that is very much the sort of like quintessential bizarro thing to me. Is like, I mean, you were saying it before, like smashing all these things together
Yeah.
that don't seem like they should go together, but fit within the framework that's created. Um, the other story I wanted to bring up is Cosmic Bruja. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. My Spanish pronunciations are not good. I have a friend from Mexico at one of my jobs, and I'm always asking him how to pronounce things. And but because of that, the line, there's a passage in there that talks about like, I don't know how, when I was in Mexico I didn't feel like I was from Mexico until I was, and then I left Mexico and I felt like I didn't belong here. That's a very sad sort of feeling, but as a person who's lived in the same state within the same like 50-mile radius his entire life, it's a feeling I do sort of get, right? Like living in Michigan.
Well, you're living in Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like
That's
it's
why.
here. Yeah, for sure. I just feel like it's here, but then I'll go, when I was in middle school and involved with religious stuff, I would go on mission trips to like West Virginia, and it would feel like a foreign country. And it's West Virginia. It's not anywhere crazy, but you
Yeah.
go to a poor part of another state that's, less than a 12-hour drive away, and it's just so completely different.
Hmm.
Um But can you talk about that piece a little bit? Because that's another one that sort of stood out to me as
So
haunting.
that piece, it's nonfiction.
Okay.
It's partly about an, my first acid trip, um, and it's also about this very visionary dream I had following that acid trip. I don't remember how long after. I don't remember if it was a few months or what. I had several very, very vivid dreams after that. So it's kind of the two mashed together, and trying to find the meaning of like what it all meant. Like why did I get so disoriented when I was high? Why did I lose my sense of self? And why do I keep having these weird flying dreams where I'll be like, oh, cool, I'm flying. And then I'll just get so like tripped out that I'm flying that it'll either end or it'll turn to a nightmare. Like, and even still now, I've had other flying dreams. I had a flying dream, like, I don't remember when it was. It was like a year or two ago. I dreamt that I was actually flying in my backyard in our house in Mexico, and I was naked and I was flying just like a very small periphery, just a little bit. And my mother was like having a fit. She was yelling at me. She's like, "Oh no, the neighbors are gonna see you!" And um, and I was like, "You're gonna make me fall. Like you're gonna make me lose my focus. I'm gonna fall." Like so in that dream, my mother was the one like messing up my mojo, my flying mojo. So there's always something. I can never just enjoy flying, and I've had enough of these dreams to where I do feel like it's something psychological with me. I don't know if it has to do with my bipolar and mania, or if it has to do with my troubles with focus, or if it's a matter of like me not having enough faith to keep going when I'm doing something. um I don't know. It's kind of me writing about trying to figure out all that. And I just had this very intense encounter in a dream with this woman that was like a witch. Like she was had blue robes. Like I've had dreams. Obviously, you're always dreaming about other people, but this was like there's some occasions where I'll dream about somebody and they look into my eyes and I look into their eyes and I don't recognize them. Like they're not just a projection of my brain. There's somebody, there's some entity. And that's how I felt looking at her. And she just was so much her own thing. And she was like this quiet guide. And she was like, "You want to know how to fly?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay." And so she like hooked me her arms and she flew and I was flying with her. Like I was flying like this and she had me like hooked, kind of like somebody teaching you to like doggy paddle or something. Like, um, and we were flying and I was seeing all this beautiful stuff, and then that feeling came over me and I started to freak out and panic. And then she just like laughed, this insane cackling laugh that scared the fucking shit out of me. And I was starting to plummet just into darkness. It was that same feeling that I had in my acid trip when everything just kind of went black and I was like, I don't know what anything is. I'm like plunging into chaos. And she was like, she said something like, you already know, or like, just focus, like you can see this, like something like that. And and through the chaos, I was able to pull my brain back into myself in this lucid dream, and I was able to regain my vision of the beautiful vistas we were flying over. So it was like the one moment in those dreams where like I actually had somebody there helping me and making sure that I didn't do the same stupid shit I do every time.
That's fantastic. uh, that's awesome. Do you have lots of lucid dreams, or are they rare enough that that's why it's so uh, stand out?
They don't happen that often any. They, I noticed that during times in my life where I'm doing a lot of like meditating and stuff like that, I'll have them more, and I unfortunately have not been. I really should get back to meditating, and that's something I'm always saying.
Mm-hmm.
But There was a period of time in my early 20s, uh, you know, after I did acid, basically several years where I was in a extremely heightened state for several years, where I was seeing visions and I was having all kinds of crazy dreams, and I felt like I really felt like I was like transcending whatever it was I was before. Um, Unfortunately, nothing, like a little bit changed, but like a lot of stuff kind of just fades. Like you can be having like an awesome mystical experience, drug or not drug induced, and you think, I will never go back to not seeing. I see now. I see the connectedness of everything. It all makes sense. Like I can see the energies being exchanged. I can see I'm part of something bigger. I'm part of the universe. Like, um, but eventually you'll just kind of settle back into your mundane reality where you wake up annoyed. You're like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. This is annoying, that's annoying. I'm just gonna dwell on stupid shit and not like, be my best self. Like it takes so much hard labor to just to keep yourself high. You can't. It's very hard, especially if you have mood disorders. It's if you have depression and bipolar and stuff like that. It's literally impossible to stay up, because that's just not the way your emotions go. You're going to be going up and down, and the best you can do is just learn to like not go as low, and when you're getting high to like not get too carried away with the mania, because then you're going to pay for it the next week with horrible depression. So but like, I don't know, I've learned some really cool lessons in dreams, and I have tried to use them to help me grow as a person. Like that one, for example. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about it a lot, but I do think about it. It's like just one of those things that's always there, and it stays there. It kind of nags at me like a particle of dust inside a oyster, like making that pearl um, of wisdom. It's just one of those little things that I'm like, wait, but was she real? Like, what was that? Like, was she an act? Like, it seemed real, but like, I don't know. Like, the brain makes up all kinds of crazy shit. Like, we can make ourselves see and believe and feel anything. Like, just because you're feeling something doesn't mean it's real. And I've learned that with having bipolar. Like, just because I feel like everything has gone to shit and I'm fucked, or like everybody definitely hates me, like that's not necessarily accurate. So, but I do wonder, and I have been actually thinking lately that I should try to like see if I can connect with some spirit guides, because if they're there and they're willing to help me, it's really stupid of me to not take advantage of that.
For sure. I agree. What kind of meditation were you doing? Were you doing like guided stuff or just mindfulness, like zazen?
The meditations I've done in the past usually involve visualization and um, chakra meditations to get my chakras open.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My really only experience with meditation has been just like straight Zen Buddhism, zazen, just sit,
Yeah,
be the sitting.
yeah, yeah. I need to do more simple meditation, just like breathing, the breath, like follow the breath and that stuff like that. It might feel boring and like nothing's really happening, but you have to build a foundation on something. I think one of the mistakes I made in my early 20s when I got really into witchcraft and mystical stuff is I had no patience and I just wanted to get on the fast track.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the spiritual speed pass to get me on the fast lane of the spiritual highway, which I think a lot of people do. I mean, that's why people get into Scientology and shit like that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the fast lane. Okay. And the thing is, like, if you do that, like, you can seriously injure yourself or cause yourself permanent psychic damage. And it's extremely dangerous. And I have done things to myself that have taken years to fix. So Yeah, it's not to be done lightly. Even if you're doing it without any drugs or anything, like if you like a simple thing, like if you really focus a lot on like getting all your chakras open and spinning and all your everything opened up, and you don't properly protect your aura, your personality, your mind can schism. You can literally make yourself, not literally but almost, schizoid, especially if you have dissociative tendencies. You can actually exacerbate your mental illness and open yourself up on the astral and the physical plane to other people just getting inside in bad ways. And you start to get really confused about like, where's the difference between your feelings and other people's and your thoughts and other people's. And it can get very confusing and your sense of self can erode. So it can actually cause the same amount of damage as, say, like somebody mentally abusing you. Like you're literally like pushing your own limits of your sanity. So it's actually better to just take it as slow as possible, because if you go fast, you can cause yourself damage. Also, acid can fuck up your brain. Like I think that first acid trip, even though it gave me amazing visionary dreams afterwards, and the experience itself like really opened me up, I don't think I was mentally prepared for it. And I feel like it really scrambled my brain, and it took years to get my bearings again.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem if you don't have like a sort of framework for how, like, is the self real and what is it, and then kind of like going from there, like a framework of like, how am I going to see the structure of everything, and then
Yeah.
you go about dabbling in the sort of things that would help realize that framework. But without the framework, you're just sort of, I mean, it's like throwing bricks, just, instead of building a house, you're just throwing bricks into a field and
Yeah.
seeing what happens.
Or just, with the nature of reality itself, I
Mm-hmm.
think um, there is a reason we are not all walking around at our highest peak of enlightenment. We would not be able to function for the most part. Our brain shuts out most information so that we can function, so that we can focus. So we're not just looking at the vast expanse of all existence. And, we'd be like the Scream, basically, like Edvard Munch's
Mm-hmm.
like that's, or like a character in a Lovecraft story. Like that's, you gaze into the abyss and you start to like just become the abyss. Um, so it's just, there's a lot of information, and there's a reason our mind shuts it out. It's for our own protection. It's so that we can function and do simple daily tasks and take care of ourselves, and not just sit there, tripping out about existence. Like we wouldn't get anything done. So it's I don't know. My goal like eventually became like, I want to be I do want to feel spiritually connected, but I also want to make sure I'm grounded, and I don't want to sacrifice one for the other, and the groundedness has to come first. So if I don't have it in me to be feeling all mystical and stuff, and pushing my boundaries with that, um, but I am like functioning in the real world, that's good enough for me. Because once you start neglecting your body, everything else falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of being enlightened if you can't do anything with it? You know,
Yeah,
I can dig it. Um, Mentioning that story is nonfiction, do you mention it in the book anywhere, or
no,
is it's just placed in there? Are there any other ones that are nonfiction in there?
yeah,
Okay.
the heroine story.
Okay. The one with the girl in the guy's basement. What's that called? Oh, Last Dance with Heroin. That's what it is. Yeah.
That's there's one embellished fact for dramatic effect, but most of it is literally exactly as it happened.
Hmm. That's an interesting thing to put nonfiction and fiction together in the same package. When I was in college, I took a class that part of what we were talking about were short story and poetry collections, and how like choosing what to put in there and the order and everything is like very, very important. Which I think you capitalize on in Tragedy Queens with the idea that it's a mixtape.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really matters as long as it's entertaining. I don't really, I don't care if people realize that they don't need to know that it's nonfiction, you know?
Sure.
But it's funny when I do tell them and they're surprised.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can dig that. That flew by. So I'm going to give you the last word. If you have any calls to action, special things you want to pimp, a manifesto you want to read real quick before we get into the reading, now is the time.
I mean, mainly I would like people to check out Clash Books. You can see what books we have on clashbooks.com. You don't have to buy them on there. They're all on Amazon, the ones that are out. There's ones that are only on there right now because they're pre-orders. So, but we have a bunch coming. If people are going to AWP in Portland, we're going to be there. We're going to have books. We're going to have a fuck ton of writers. We're doing a reading that Friday at the sandwich shop. The events page is on Facebook. I also have a podcast of my own. It's called Get Lit with Leza, and it's on Podbean and iTunes. And yeah, people should get Tragedy Queens. And I do have so my poetry book is coming out. So that's up for pre-order on the Clash Book site, and it's called Trash Panda, and it's just like these weird emo poems that seem like they're bad poetry, but they're actually I don't know.
They're actually good poetry. What's the release date on that?
We've been trying to figure that out. I'm thinking around May.
Okay.
Yeah. Might be sooner. I don't know. Probably May, like May 1st.
Well, if people pre-order it, then they won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
They'll get it when they get it.
Yeah, we're actually right about to upload the full wrap. I just got the full wrap. It's so cool because my brother did the cover. And so yeah, that will be. So I'll send out signed copies and stuff of that. And I'm really excited. It's my first poetry collection. Like, it's crazy. I've written poetry since I was a teenager, and I've always been really shy about sharing it, and finally have the confidence to share it. So I hope people enjoy it. And I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Leza Cantoral. And Clash is on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So we have a lot of exciting books coming out. It's really exciting. So there's if I'm not your cup of tea, like, somebody that we're publishing will be. I'm going to read Marilyn of Wonderland. It's inspired by Marilyn Monroe, who I am low-key obsessed with, and my time in New York, which was sadly brief. I was only there for like 6 months, but it was a very life-changing time in my life where I was listening to a lot of Lana Del Rey and like had found my true love and was like really finding myself and was kind of starting to deal with all my shit. So it's a reimagining, and like I talked in the podcast, I'm really into Alice in Wonderland too, and that was a big influence on me and inspired me a lot. I kind of combined the two, so it's Marilyn in Wonderland, and it's inspired by the intro poem in Alice in Wonderland, uh, the poem he writes at the beginning, about like still she haunts me, phantom wise, Alice moving under the skies, never seen by waking eyes. Might be at the beginning of Through the Looking Glass, but yeah. So this poem is inspired by Marilyn and Alice in Wonderland, and like just being in New York and thinking about Marilyn, her time in New York, and what that was like. So kind of like meeting with the ghost of her, seeing her everywhere. All right. Marilyn in Wonderland. Don't look in the mirror. Don't look, because you will see Marilyn through the looking glass. Her twin brains glittering and glitter and digest the celluloid dream. The forest is thick for those who wander. Lost and found, crumbling underground. Where does the rabbit hole end? I wander through the streets of New York City. I see my reflection in the shop windows, half expecting to see Marilyn looking back at me. Her body might be in the Westwood Cemetery, but her heart is in NYC. In NYC, she could finally disappear. In NYC, she sought refuge from the swarm, the camera eyes that stripped her bare. You cannot x-ray a soul. Skeleton face, calavera of love. I look for Marilyn in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. She's not there, but I find the urn of Peter Lorre, and I wonder why he couldn't afford a nicer gravestone. Marilyn tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, wound up in her telephone cord, a Hollywood mummy, preserved for all eternity. Still she haunts me, phantom-wise, Marilyn moving under the skies, never seen by waking eyes. She's not in the dirty New York snow, caked to the curb. She's not in the radiator that groans like a mechanical beast from the bowels of Mordor. She found her voice in the actor's studio, a bookworm devouring Ulysses. In madness she walks through mirrors far and wide. She died in beauty like the night. A psychic in Greenwich Village tells me that my aura is white, but I don't believe her, because my shadows eat up all the light. Dark twin devouring me, dark pairings lost at sea. I hear her laughter bubbling off the shore. I find Marilyn in Key West, in front of the Tropicana, her smile frozen in plaster, blowing her skirts to Cuba.